This is The Breakthrough Artists with CJ Lloyd Webley.
We are here today with the amazing Ben Amanna, who is the founder of BOXRAW. You know how we do on this podcast, we just like to meet with amazing entrepreneurs and just see how they came to do what they do and how they got onto this entrepreneurial journey. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you, Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you become the founder of our Forbes enterprise? It is Forbes. What did I say? 30?
Back in the 30, I think it is.
Yeah.
30.
Amazing, man. And also the 35 West Midlands under 35, because that's how I got in touch with you, because
Oh, yeah.
that list. So, just tell us a little bit about yourself first and how you did get into creating this amazing enterprise.
Yeah. So I've been boxing since I was 12 years old, right? I mean, the very short sort of story how I came about to actually launching the company. There was this sort of trigger pivotal moment. It was following the failure of a previous business I was working on. I was distraught. I was working on this business for like a year and a half with two other co-founders. And then 5 days into launch, they both said they wanted to stop shop and to try and find other jobs. And I was so annoyed at the time, man. I remember I was training for a fight at the time. And, this is probably like within 5 days after. We're running down the street in this Adidas tracksuit. I remember just thinking, I want people to know I'm training for a fight, right? I was proud to box. It was just, I remember it was such a pivotal moment. And the more I was thinking about it over the next few days, I just recognized that there wasn't a boxing brand, out there that at least represented boxing how I knew it to be, right? The brands that came before us, they just focused on the end result of boxing, the glamification of the sport, the prize fighters. They didn't really focus about the journey. It was more about the boots, gloves, shorts. But to me, it was the journey to get to that point, the lifestyle of the sport. That was really what was most beautiful to me. I just recognized, this was a business that needed to be launched, and just throughout time from the age of 12, what boxing had done for me and how I'd seen it change people's lives, both me, the kids in the street, friends at university, post-uni. I recognized that it was a sport that really had the power to change, not just physically, but emotionally. The core tenets of BOXRAW, it's built off the principles of boxing, which is discipline, mindfulness, and love. And it was very much that vision to be the reason why the world got into boxing. So how do we do that? And the product's almost a byproduct of what we do. We're very much service driven. Our approach to our marketing, to things we do outside of the actual business with the charity we've got. And that was a tick moment, man.
Amazing. And so I just want to rewind a little bit to that first business enterprise. Was that a boxing brand as well?
No, that was a mobile phone app. So it's it was essentially Instagram stories. But it was before Instagram stories. But the premise was that if I sent something to you, it would only be viewed by our mutual friends, and it disappeared after 24 hours.
Okay.
So it's quite a private social network, but that was the principle. But that was one business, man. If I told you every business that I tried my hands at, I think, you would have told me to give up at the start of Box. Friends from uni, actually, it's straight after, because I was promoting this out for like a year and a half, man. I was going in on it, while we were building it, telling friends about it, getting them the beta testing. And then, 5 days in, if I didn't tell anybody, 10 days after that, I was like, right, I'm working on the next thing, not help and give it a rest.
So that that entrepreneurial spirit, that fight, I guess, isn't it, to succeed, that fight for, wanting to do something that was clearly deeply ingrained in you, that entrepreneurial, mindset. Would you attribute that to actually being involved in boxing from an early age?
100%, man. 100%. But boxing taught me to be a man, right? Listen, I was a little shit growing up, okay? And I got bullied a lot, growing up initially. Parents came from India, they were Christian missionaries, and moved to England in an all-white Roman Catholic school. So naturally I was the subject to a lot of bullying. I could never really associate with the brown guys, on the street, because they were either Muslim, Hindu, Sikh. The white guys were all Christian, and they wouldn't accept me. So I was like this outsider, but at the same time I was always like quite a bit of a rebel. And I remember, but for me, boxing, it was, I was getting chased home most days from school, just stupid school kid bullying, man. At age 12, I was like, I need to put a stop to this, So there was a free class at the boxing gym down the road from me. and I joined that class, and instantly I fell in love with it, and the bullying stopped. I was able to stand up for myself. What was more important was that I recognized after, a few months being there, this wasn't just about learning how to fight another guy, punch another guy in the face. It taught me the principles of discipline, which when I talked about the principles of boxing, but discipline's the obvious one, right? And most people can understand that when it comes to boxing. But, the notion of being in a boxing gym whereby you get told to do a certain thing in your own time, like road running, your own shadow boxing, and you can see the results the week after, like you don't get that in school, where instantaneously from taking a beating or lack thereof, you know that you've made progress, right? So you, at that young age, you start to recognize that, okay, this makes a difference, right? Work ethic. You can't cheat the grind in boxing. It's so relentless, and so it's very much based on the individual versus a team, like a team sport. That was my first real sort of understanding of discipline. And then, when it comes to bouncing back, it's just the very nature of the sport, right? Is that, I remember once, I was probably like 15 or 16, had a shit sparring session, man. I had my head taken off, and I remember just thinking, I'm done with this. Why am I even doing this? I remember my coach was saying to me, is that, you find a way to win the fight. Okay, so you are going to get knocked down. It's long, deep talk to me. Right? It's stuck to me for such a long time, man. About bouncing back, and boxing teaches you that, without a doubt. And then just to quickly touch on the other principles of boxing, that mindfulness. It's the one that no one ever sort of associates with the sport, right? But the idea and concept of hitting a moving object while it's trying to hit you back, while you're protecting your head and you're protecting your body while moving your feet in sync with the upper body, it requires focus like nothing else, right? You can't think about the past, imagine the future. You have to be present in the moment, and then love, from the point of view of my background, where I came from, not really being accepted. The boxing gym was the only place that accepted me as a kid growing up, right? It didn't matter where you came from. All that mattered was where you were headed. And that's how they judged you. They judged you on your performance, at training, your work ethic, you just showing up, and that was it. I'd see kids in the street who I was scared of from different gangs, right? And I remember there was one guy I saw in the boxing gym. This was at the age of 12. I was so scared. I saw him in the boxing gym from a distance. Oh, great. He's also at this club. And we were like best friends. There was that mutual respect, and I never got that anywhere else. And conversely, university, I started a boxing club, and it was a completely different cohort of people, right? Very wealthy backgrounds, publicly educated. And for them, it was doing so much more than, they weren't there to try and compete. At the same time, they were part of this collective whereby everyone was so focused on their own goals, but at the same time, so supportive of one another. And it was something that I never really saw anywhere else. So, when it came to the ideation of BOXRAW, it was like, I really started to recognize that this was more than just the sport. It was a way to, it taught you the principles of living, right? Yeah. It embedded in you, rightly, like you touched on, it's an attitude toward life, boxing. It really is a lifestyle. It's just, and now people are starting to see that, in that there's so many different dimensions to the sport. You don't have to compete anymore. Now you can get group fitness classes, box size classes, box fit. I think there's so many variations, but the notions and principles of sport, they apply no matter what element you're in, right? Yeah. And that was the moment, So in answer to your question, has boxing helped? 100%. It's who I am.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes it so much more special, though, isn't it? When you're pushing forward with a brand, not just because you want to have lots of people wearing your stuff, but because you want, obviously, people that resonate with the idea of having that holistic approach. Because you rightly said it, like, particularly when people, I mean, I watch a little bit of boxing, nothing crazy. I mean, I don't proclaim to be an expert or anything like that. I know that sometimes when boxing matches are on, like the big ones, like everybody's an expert then, aren't they? But
especially at the pub.
Exactly. But yeah, it's that kind of thing of, you're leading with, it sounds like you just lead with your passion about what boxing can do for people. And so how much of that played a part when, actually, let me bring it back. So you had two Christian missionary parents. So what was their stance on you doing boxing at that?
My mom didn't even know I boxed. She knew she took me to the boxing gym, right? It was actually my dad that she didn't want me to go. She called him my dad's. And I think it was like a few weeks before I was doing my paper round, and I got knocked out. Some kid punched me, and I came home with a fucking huge bloody lip, right? Mum was obviously shocked and blah, blah, blah. She thought I'd just do boxing for self-defense, but when it actually, push came to pull, she was like against it. She called my dad up, they're separate at this point. And he was all for it, but she was against us. Basically, basically the whole time, right, mom never knew I competed. She just thought I was doing it for fitness, doing pads and bags and so on. So she was completely against the sport. Dad was all for it. But again, it's because both of them, like my dad wanted me to do it for almost the wrong reasons, right? He wanted me to be able to learn to handle myself. Whereas my mom was so scared about the sport, she just, she was just against it, right? They both were completely unaware of the benefits of the sport. It wasn't until I got into it, I recognized that. Which is, that's why we're here, right? We're here to shift that perception and narrative around the sport of it being viewed as this elite sport where you have to partake to compete. You have to compete to partake, even. It's a big disillusion amongst most people still to this day. Now it's getting a lot more popularity, but there's still a lot of naysayers who say, why would I need to do boxing? I'm not aggressive. And it's the opposite. It makes you way less aggressive because you know how to handle yourself. You don't want to put yourself in that position. It's like, why would I do that? But at the same time, I can walk with confidence.
So what do you see the brand as more of a healthcare brand? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's like, you see it more as like an auntie or an uncle can get involved in boxing and see the benefits from it, and rather than boxing having this stigmatization of being really aggressive and you have to fight people, and I don't know what.
It's interesting. I've never thought about it like that in terms of healthcare. I mean, I suppose to some degree. I mean, when I think healthcare, I'm thinking like pharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah.
I consider it a lifestyle brand.
Right.
So I want BOXRAW to represent an attitude toward life. That's what I want. And nothing makes me happier than when I get messages or even from friends who I've known for ages and they're like, "Oh, I've just started boxing." I'm like, it makes me happy. If you send me a message next week and say, "Oh, Ben, I actually just joined a boxing class," it's going to make me happy. Have that impact on people where they're willing to try it.
So what's the difference between say just being in a gym, sparring, working out? What's the difference in mindset required to then going into that competitive arena? What is required in terms of preparation to kind of go from sparring, training, to actually going in? Because I've got a cousin who's a boxer as well. I'll talk a little bit more about him in a bit, but the psychology, I guess, as someone who's competed yourself, it's different.
It's a very good question, right? So the difference between sparring or doing intense training is that it's very much in the physical. There's a huge mental element involved in that, right? But ultimately, when you're actually getting in the ring, you're putting it all on the line, right? In your training, you've always got the safety net. It's like if you have a bad spar, now I'm mature enough whereby if you have a bad spar, it's not personal to a degree. It's not personal to any degree, firstly, but it's not. You recognize that you're there to learn. When it comes to the actual fight night, there's no second chance, right? And you've also got the world watching, really competitors or, friends and family watching. So your ego is also on the line. So this is where the mental aspect really comes in. It's something which is really hard to talk about tangibly because how do you measure the mental stress that someone goes through? But it's more so that knowing that you're doing something with a definitive end time, and after that, that's that, right? You get, and we just launched a collaboration around this concept of 36 minutes, right? But you've got 36 minutes in a professional fight to be able to make it fair, right? And after that, you're done. So I think what's required more so in preparation for an actual fight is just your mental stress and going through that camp and knowing shit. Injuries will come on. Okay, I've still got to fight.
Yeah, and I was thinking as well about how, because naturally sometimes you must get into a fight and be like, this guy's down good, man. Like, how does then the psychology of that come into play when the person that you're fighting against he's probably a little bit quicker or a little bit stronger, or how does that actually relate to business in a sense? So when you're coming up against those kind of challenges where you think it's could possibly be too big for you or too much of that.
I think it's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that. It's a really good question. I think the big thing within boxing, what it teaches you is you have to already go in believing you're going to win, right? If you're going in there and already starting to size the other guy up and sort of have these doubts, then ultimately you're in the wrong sport. And it's the same for me. I don't look at these big brands and think, oh my God, how am I going to get to that point? You know, it's the case of when, you know, not if. In my head, I'm already there. You know, in my head, I'm already going through the motions of getting to that point. So it all comes down to the actual mindset, you know, both in the ring and in business. You know, if you're looking, if you've got these doubts, the doubts are great, right? It challenges you. It puts the pressure on. I perform way better under pressure when I'm worrying about certain stuff. But I have to believe that I'm going to get to that point that I want to get to. Or I'm going to get that win, right?
Yeah.
If I don't believe that, I genuinely believe it, and I'm just saying it for the sake of it, then it's not going to happen. Because ultimately, it's going to get too hard. In the same way in the ring, right? It's going to get too hard. You know, you can say, oh, okay, I'm telling myself now I'm going to win. You know, I'm going to win this fight, but ultimately, I don't really believe it. You haven't got to, you know, when shit hits the fan, when you're in the ring, that's when it's all going to show. You know, because it's easy to show, you know, put on a brave face in training camp, you know, or even to your staff or, you know, to other people in business. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, you really have to believe that, because otherwise, the pain is going to be too hard. You're not going to cope with it.
Yes.
So relatable.
I mean, I am a creative person, so I probably will just come out with some quite philosophical questions, but I just see there's so much parallel between that, literally, because sometimes, you know, when I'm running Black Pants project, I'm like, it's quite overwhelming, because people, you know, are coming to you with their problems or whatever it is that they're trying to overcome, and like you're trying to overcome your daily problems, growing pain as well. So it's almost like I'm thinking about what you're saying. I'm like, that psychology, that kind of tunnel vision to know where you're going must play a part in that arena, but also in the entrepreneurial space as well. So I was going to ask, how do you kind of manage your like days then? So how big is your team at the moment, and how did you get to that point where you actually started to build a team, I guess, to go through that growing stage?
So I mean, the team right now is, I mean, actually your first question about how do I structure my day and time and so on. Like I'm so, boxing taught me this, right? Boxing, you follow such a strict schedule with how you set your training, your diet, especially when you're in camp, right? My day's no different. So I'm so regimented. I don't even need to look at my calendar to tell you, right? So it's 4 a.m. wake up. Okay, by 4:15, and you know, I've got a list of things I do, and people can take what they will from them. But I've tried different things over the years to try and see what works for me, right? And I've taken it from, it's not stuff I've just invented, it's stuff I've heard from other people. First 3 things I do when I wake up is write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. I then write down 3 things that I'm planning on doing for that day. So big goals I'm trying to achieve. And finally, write down 3 affirmations. You know?
And actually, that's a daily thing. So daily, you'll say
every day. It takes me 5 minutes to do it. So that's 4:15 to 4:20. Following that, I'll meditate. I meditate for about 20. Well, I meditate for 20 minutes. About just after 4:25. I have a little bit of a break, walk around, make a coffee. I meditate for 20 minutes. And I do this twice a day, by the way, the meditation. It's called transcendental meditation. So I've tried different types of meditation. Okay. It's called transcendental. And the reason why I'm doing that, actually, just to give you some context of why I'm doing the rituals at the start, you know, starting the day off on a positive note, just reminding yourself what you're grateful for and, you know, how far you've come. It's a great tone to start the day versus just trying to, you know, go through your emails, check your social media. It's often very negative, especially my email. You know, I'll wake up to so many dozen problems, man. I've got to fix this. I'm basically a firefighter. So it's very important, man. Following the meditation, I go into just general wishy-washy work, you know, so I'll be looking at emails after that. I'll train then, I'll go to the gym for 6:30. I'll train for 45 minutes. I'll then do a 10-minute swim. I'll just smash out a load of lengths, jump in the sauna, cold shower, and I get to the office for about 7 o'clock. Sorry, I get to the office about 7:30. 8 o'clock is book club. So in the office, we have all the music shuts down. The reason why the music's shutting down is important is because it's like a nightclub at the office. There's music blaring 24 hours of the day. But 8 o'clock is book club. So we have it's called book club. We have all of our staff, most of the staff will come in. We pay for the literature and essentially just learning time. So we're learning about a role, about departments, you know, even self-improvement. Normal working day, 9 can finish anywhere about, I don't know, 8, 9, 7. It varies, right, each day. I'll finish off with writing down 3 things that went great about the day and then 3 things that went bad. that could have been improved. I then write my journal. It takes me about 20 minutes. And I'm just a big advocate for journaling. Typically I find any problem that I've got, and I've sort of, I'll look through my calendar, write down the things that sort of I struggled with, and I'll typically find the solution. Just kind of get in your own head and think. The process of typing things out, it forces you to rationalize the problem that you've got, because you can think at, a million miles an hour, and you've got so, you could give me a problem right now, my brain will be ticking in so many directions. It's hard for me to really focus, but trying to focus on a problem through text, or even writing handwritten, it's so powerful, it's so underrated. So even, the team sometimes will come to me with problems they've got, and I'll just say, have you journaled it? Yeah. I'll just send them to a coffee shop, say, look, tell yourself the problem and try and solve it and come back to me. The answer's within you. And they come back 9 times out of 10, they find a solution. It's just that when you're in the hustle and bustle of your head, it's very easy, looking around to get distracted and almost let emotions get into it. But when you're journaling, that all goes away. If you haven't got time to like whine and, cry, actually, let's try and use this time to be productive. So that's the day.
I hope you listeners, I hope you listeners are taking note of this, because these are some gems, and I'm actually so glad that I'm recording this myself, because I'm going to go and listen back, because what you just dropped there, I mean, just the thought, because I get up quite early as well, but for me, sometimes it just feels like a chore, but the way you've just mentioned it in terms of like the structure, but also the flexibility within that structure, like I've never had it broke down like that before. It's like everything has its purpose. It's not just like you're doing random things. You've put these things in place because okay, if I get this meditation in now, it's all going to benefit me later on in the day or the next day. So I just love everything you've just said, really, and I'm looking forward to listen back to it so I can start implementing some of that stuff myself.
Yeah. This is the key is that this won't work for everyone. Now I've tried so many other things in terms of daily rituals that just weren't realistic for me to sort of, because I'm so disciplined. Like you tell me, right, Ben, try this, I'll try it, and I'll try it consistently for some time, right? But you also have to be self-aware enough to know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Like, there's so many successful people who don't meditate, or who don't journal, or don't wake up early, or who don't go to the gym. So it's about finding what works for you, and having, taking your ego out of it enough to say, actually, this might sound like it's good, or, even vice versa, being aware enough to know, okay, do I need to get more structure in the day that's going to help X, Y, and Z? Me, there's a logic, as you said, there's a logic behind it. With meditation, it allows me to be calmer in certain situations, helps me with sleep. And it's just kind of like a me time. And when you can get into, people want to research transcendental meditation, when you can get into a transcendental state, it's so bliss. So bliss. And yeah, again, it really does help.
And so are there ever times where where something's kind of, you haven't been able to do something in the day? So you have your structure, but maybe something's happened and it's like throwing
all the time, right? In fact, maybe another bit of good advice, right? When I made the switch from having to-do lists to actually scheduling, so actually use my Outlook calendar and saying, planning at the start of the week, so every Sunday, again, for context, is the same sort of rituals I've just broken up, but a little bit more elongated in terms of goal setting. It's like a big fucking, I can't believe I missed this one. Big one. I read my goals twice a day. Okay. So we've got our goals for the year, we've got our goals for the quarter and for the month, and personal goals for the week, which are set on a Sunday. I'll read them twice daily, and it just reminds me again what we're going after. So yeah, it's in terms of structuring it, like making sure things don't sort of follow over. When I used to have a to-do list, I used to use a Kanban view on Trello. That's when things always used to just get, end of the day would come, the things that weren't that much of a priority didn't get done. I had this constant backlog, right? And it was very inefficient and also really motivating when you get to the end of the day and you do to-do list, it hasn't been done. When I made the switch to scheduling through Outlook, and actually at the start of the week saying, right, this is going to be for this, this time I'm designating is going to be for this project, next one for the next one. Then it made it so much easier. But listen, I'm not the finished article. Like even month on month, I'll change how I'm doing things. And it's just, again, about like recognizing, is this the right way to do it? Like, good example, I scheduled to do things and I do it, but it just wasn't enough time. So I was rushing it and have enough headspace to actually get into the job. So listen, it's, again, take what you will from what I'm saying, but it's not going to work for everyone. But at the same time, you just need to be self-aware enough to understand and sort of reflect on what is working and what isn't working.
Absolutely. And so in that vein then, what are the things that you enjoy doing most about your work, and what are the things that take up a lot of time, or maybe are your preferred things to do but they're important? I don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, the things I enjoy the most is going to be the product engineering. So when I say engineering, I'm talking about the actual equipment that we're launching. I mean, I say product engineering, but if you go on the website, we only sell hand wraps and knuckle guards, but we've got stuff we've been working on for 4 years now, over 4 years now: boxing gloves, bags, pads, groin guards, and so on. All patented. It's all patented features, multiple patents on each product. That sort of stuff I really enjoy. Enjoy the product power design, and enjoy the partnerships element. Outside of that, I mean, listen, I'm responsible for the company, right? So I try not to dwell too much on what I do enjoy, what I don't enjoy. It's more about what energizes me. For instance, I'm doing a lot of work at the moment with all the departments, with this new sort of management structure. And, I'm working in departments which previously I thought I didn't have an interest in, but because we've got this new structure, I'm energized now, because I can see the value of me putting this work in and how it's going to help these departments. So it varies, but without a doubt, engineering, design, and then partnerships, dealing with the actual boxes.
Yeah. How do you go about, I'm going to ask this question, then I'm going to go back to how you actually went from, because I saw a couple of things on your IG where you were just drawing like little designs about what you wanted the BOXRAW logo to
logo. Yeah.
But yeah, so how did you go from like that stage where you were literally just trying to conceptualize this thing to now obviously having boxers like Javante, Wilder, all these guys, pioneers of the sport? How did you leverage those relationships, coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky and fortunate that the timing was key, right? It's ultimately the timing. We started just over 4 years ago, when Instagram for the boxing community wasn't that big. We launched, and then the other big Instagram, Ryan Garcia is a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
First of all, we had, I think, 18 months of pre-launch marketing, because it just took me that long to launch the brand. I was so naive in how long I thought it would take, but when we launched, we had about 20,000 followers. Ryan Garcia probably had thereabouts the same. So it was very easy back then to go into the DM of a boxer and message them. And it's essentially what we did. That model you can't use. You can still use it, but it's just, the chances of getting picked up are very low. But boxing at that time wasn't that big through socials. It was more things like weightlifting, which were starting to gain popularity. In the space. Boxing wasn't that big then. So I'd messaged them, very candidly, and just built the relationships authentically, man. Got to know them, sent them the gear. They loved the gear. And it just sort of, the product spoke for itself. We didn't have to pay. We still haven't paid to date, penny in any influencer, boxer, endorsements. The guys you see wearing it are wearing because they want to wear it. It's just the product's very good quality. It's better than anything else that's out there that's like for like. I'm not just saying that. And the proof is in the pudding. We don't have to pay some of the biggest celebrities, rappers, boxers in the world to wear it. Yeah, they still, they either wear it from us gifting it or their customers.
Yeah. And that's so, like, it's strange to hear that, but it's a testament to your product, of course. But it's so strange to hear that you haven't like kind of like forced that relationship. You've actually believed so much in your product that you're like, wow, if we gift this, then we know people are gonna wear it. We know that, this is what boxers want, because you're coming from that sport yourself, so you just know, what wasn't there, and you've really just filled that need, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, I think the other thing as well is that back then when I first started, I was just me running the social accounts. So I mean, it's still to this day, it's I still feed into the social team in some direction, but even back then, it was so authentic to the sport, boxers could relate to it. The lingo that I used, I could speak to them. It was like, okay, this is legit. This isn't just another clothing company that's popping up. That's just trying to see products. Like, there's an actual purpose behind what we're doing.
And then, so as the excuse me, as the brand is growing, then how much of you is still at the forefront of it then? So, because of course, as it grows, more people get involved. Of course, you hire them on the basis that they share the same value and things like that. But how important is it at times to maybe let go of, because you just mentioned about all the different departments. How difficult was it for you then?
It's so hard. Um, Especially when it comes to things to do with creativity. When it came to things like customer service and the warehouse picking and packing, it's like, okay, I can trust someone to do this if I give them the right direction. But when it comes to things that are so unique to me and the brand, which is the brand voice, the product design, dealing with the boxes and so on, it was super, super hard. But it was also quite simple, when it came to, as I said, I was a year and a half as a one-man band. The first hire was my best friend, Party, who's now partnerships director over here. And he started off with, business started to take off a year and a half in, didn't even pay myself. In fact, I had another business running on the side, a car sales business, which was funding BOXRAW. It wasn't able, my brother was running that while I was building BOXRAW. And then all the money we made from the car sales business, we put into this business. So it just got to the point whereby orders started to really take off a year and a half in. So really take off, but more enough for, not too much that one person couldn't handle on their own, right?
Yeah.
So for the first thing was he would take over the picking and packing, which was in the garage at the time. Next one, Isaac then moved over, my brother, from the car sales business, and he took over the customer service because it just started to take up too much time. And the next one was the graphic designer, Nathan, who's now digital director. He was a Coventry University intern, came in just as a graphic design student to help out with building out emails for us on Photoshop. Because I didn't have time to do that. So it's very much a logical process of, right, where's my time best spent, where I add the most value, and what can I now bring someone else, to help with. It's a little bit different now because now I don't have every touch point. So now it's very much the need of the business. What does the business need? Where can we forecast more growth if we have this new head in this space? So hiring is challenging in the early days, and I think more so around cash flow, right? It's just in terms of cash flow, like we touched earlier about, it's great, you can send the product with confidence. The reality is I didn't have any money to pay the influencer or pay the boxer.
Yeah.
It was my only rational, logical step. And then the hiring now, it's just a case of trying to fill roles in areas of the business we recognize, need growth, essentially. And it's a challenge, man. It's a challenge. We've grown, at a fairly decent rate since launching.
Yeah.
We've got 48 staff now. This time last year we had about 20 something,
full-time staff as well.
Yeah. They're split, we've got 25 or so in the Coventry office. I think 25 in the Coventry office, about 28 totally in the UK. And the rest split between USA, Philippines and Pakistan.
Oh, wow.
Quite a global team. Yeah.
So is your role currently founder CEO at the moment?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So who's your touch point, your main touch point? Say you needed a little bit of advice or you weren't quite sure about something. Who's the number one person you go to? Do you have a...
It really varies, right? Because people's skill sets is different, right? The leadership team first and foremost, they're my sounding board and everything, right? We're so open and transparent. So they're my number one when it's something that they don't necessarily have the experience for. I've got mentors, I've got friends, that I'll go to for certain bits of advice. I've got a very good network around me. People that really want to see me win as well. They're very supportive and from the start on the journey. So I'm very grateful. And in fact, was one of the things I wrote down this morning. Just the network that I've got. It's just that there's so much love that I get from people, and I think finding those people, is key, because if you think that you have all the answers or all the answers, then you've got no hope in hell, man.
Yeah.
The reality is, listen, I don't know shit about shit. Honestly, I kind of find it weird when people gas me up. It's like I'm just trying, man. I'm just trying to do my best.
Well, based on based on the advice that you're given, and you clearly it seems like you're like a sponge. I think maybe that being involved in boxing for such an early age and that discipline just helps you on how to listen and find the right people.
100%, man. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, Black Pants Project is a mentorship organization. we're set up to provide mentors to Black and diverse business owners, because I think sometimes the concept of mentorship is often overlooked as something that is like for people who don't know what they're doing. But you know, how important would you say mentorship is for you?
Man, it's so important. Listen, when you've got somebody who supports your vision and has no ulterior motive in the advice that they give you, because the other thing is, right, you can get advice from certain, I've done this time and time again, you know, I keep making the same mistake. You get advice from certain people in certain positions whereby they can benefit from the advice they give you. So they almost lead you down a wrong track. But when you get a mentor that's purely just has your own best interest at heart, then it's a win, right? Now, it's not necessarily you always need to take the exact advice they give you, but they'll always give you some sort of idea or spark something. You know, I've been given advice from some mentors, and they've made a point of view that's made me recognize that I'm actually right, you know, and that they were still wrong, you know.
Yeah.
But it's when you have that sounding board, that's how magic happens, right? And you can't. It's hard to get that with just the people that you work with. So when you got someone that's been there and done it, you know, again, I've got a mentor, Andy, who completely different type of business, right? But he's got a big business with lots of staff. So he's very good at people management and understanding processes, operations, things like that. You know, I wouldn't go to him for advice on, does this campaign look good? Do you like this product, right? It's understanding where your blind spots are, weaknesses are, where you don't necessarily have the experience, and trying to leverage that from somebody else.
I hear that. And a lot, I went to a networking event today, and a lot of people say they do have, a lot of the like really successful CEOs, they have several mentors, and they also say that there comes a point where sometimes you might outgrow, you know, that mentor for that particular time. But then you find people who are suitable for where you're at now. And so, I mean, for you, do you look for mentors, or do they just happen?
At the start, I did a lot. I mean, now I'm fortunate enough. I've got a very solid network, and I'll simply just ask a friend, you know, or I'll ask somebody in my network, you know, do you know anyone that could advise on this? You know, and I'll get introduced to somebody. But in the early days, yeah, it was big for me. It was a struggle, you know, because starting out, I give my time now to kids who want to get mentored, but I usually have to get an introduction from somebody. Like, so you get, you know, I get messages from certain people who say, "Oh, can you help me with this?" Like, I'll help them to a degree through Instagram, you know, through a DM. But past that point, it becomes hard to manage all of that. So trying to get an introduction, try and get a mentor, you know, the project you guys have got going on, perfect way to get a mentor, because otherwise it's hard, especially to get people that actually have the knowledge.
Yeah. You have to protect your time as well, don't you?
Exactly. It's hard, you know, like, you know, I'd love to try and help everyone I can, but the reality is I haven't got that many hours in the day.
I was gonna say as well, because I imagine your LinkedIn, you must be getting crazy amounts of DMs on there. How do you select like I mean, I'll probably just ask, you know, what made you speak to me? Because I'm sure there's probably lots of people that message you.
Again, that just came from 35 under 30. But look, I've got about, I think, 1,800 LinkedIn requests. I don't accept anyone. Because the problem is, it's such a seedy platform. Yeah. Everyone's, hey, man, we'd like to improve your business. I'm like, I haven't got. The thing is, at the time, I used to, I took the bait, right? Because I was like, oh, I'm just getting up. This person really know me. And you just realize it's just, I mean, my personal experience, I wouldn't reach out to someone. If you reached out to me saying, Ben, can I mentor you? Can you mentor me on LinkedIn? I'd ignore it, right? Because there's so much of it, and people got so much of an ulterior motive. Whereas if it came from introduction, I'd be completely cool with it. And the reason why we connected, I think it was because of that 35 into 35. Yeah. So that's, I thought, okay, fine, there's a connection there. You know, I'm happy to make that. But otherwise, it's a no, man, from me anyway.
I hear that, and it must be. I mean, I get it myself, so I know I feel your pain, man. But I was gonna say then, so for you, just in the interest of time, so for you, what is your ultimate ambition for yourself, and then your business as well? So I don't know if they're synonymous, but are there
ultimate ambition? Like, it comes back to the vision, right? I really want to be the reason why the world got into boxing. Like, it's not a statement that I take lightly. I fully recognize the notion of saying, I'm going to be the reason why the world got into boxing. I mean, Ben, you can probably get 75% of the world population into boxing, but not 100% of the population. Well, no, I actually believe that I can. You know, and it starts with things like getting boxing back into schools. And we're working on programs to try and bring boxing back into schools. We do programs with our charity, Boxing is Love, which does programs with, you know, different disadvantaged schools. You know, the charity Boxing is Love itself we can't say we're here to be the reason why the world got into boxing and then disregard a third of the world's population who don't have access to the sport. It's so inauthentic, right? We are here to be the reason why the world got into boxing. So we've got this charity, we're building boxing gyms across the third world. First one's been built in Liberia. We're in other community projects, in places where they don't have access to that, or they never will have access. And it's not just about, we don't say we want every kid to become a world champion. It's not about that. It's about setting that mindset, those principles around discipline, mindfulness, love. If we can do that, we can change the world, period. Okay. Kids will be way less aggressive in school. They'll have something to focus on. They'll be more mindful. They'll be more caring for one another. There'll be a mutual respect between, the people you get into the boxing gym with, because the torture is, it's not about competing. It's knowing the torture of the training. It's a full body workout. It's a win-win. That's my ultimate ambition, right? Is that measurable? No, it's tricky. To say what's the ambition with the business, I don't have an exit plan. This is such a big passion of mine. I want to compete with the big boys. Okay, if we want to add some tangible notion to the the idea of what this ambition is, I want to compete with the big boys. I'm creating $1 billion company. Okay, first ambition, enjoy the journey, man. Enjoy the journey. I've got my own personal goals. As I said, one of them is to write a New York Times bestseller one day. Wants to go into space. I've got personal goals.
Want to go to space?
Oh, mate, my passion outside of boxing and business, that are my two passions, right? Is space. I love learning about space. Love learning about it. I find it so interesting. I don't know, but the business that would happen after BOXRAW, if there is ever an after BOXRAW, would be something to do with space. The only thing that
space, boxing in space, raw.
Yeah.
Space raw.
I'm afraid about that, man.
Yeah, man. I want my props for that one, because that. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, just hearing your passion and your the why you're doing this. It's very much, as you say, you want the world to get into boxing, but it's not about just getting people into fighting. No, it's about getting people to understand that mindset and the discipline, and helping young people to be able to channel their energetic propensities, really, and do something positive, because we're living in a world, unfortunately, there's a lot of crime, particularly in the Midlands at the moment, and from what you're saying, if we could really channel those young people into things like entrepreneurship, things like having a space to use some of that energy, and why wouldn't we want that?
100%.
So just on the final point, and just for our entrepreneurial listeners, if there is someone that is starting out their business, maybe it's a clothing brand, maybe it's some kind of tech company, or they've just got this really burning desire to do this company, what are kind of 3 tips you would give them to know whether this is a viable business option? Because it might be that they're leading with their passion, but how do they know that it's viable? Because that's one thing that we get asked quite a lot.
Yeah, it's a good question. How do you know it's viable? I mean, the first big advice, first one is find the why. Okay, if you want to start a clothing brand, then it needs to be an actual why associated with that, right? People don't. There's a very famous. If you haven't watched it, any of the listeners, there's a video on YouTube called The Golden Circle. It's a TED Talk. It's one of the top 5 all-time watched TED Talks, right? But it's about, people don't buy what you do, they're about why you do it, okay? The why needs to be stronger than the what. You can't just go out in a saturated market and just launch a clothing brand, right? People need to know what they're resonating with, and it's not, people don't buy products anymore, they buy the rationale behind it, and which brings me on the second point, the problem you're solving. The second point is launching a business, like, what problem are you trying to solve? You can't just go in there trying to make some money, okay? And for me, the problem was, there wasn't a brand that represented boxing. The vision wasn't, let's launch a boxing clothing brand. The problem that I had was that there wasn't one, okay, that represented it. That's why I did it, okay? And I think the third thing is that you just need to be persistent. You need to be persistent, because it's so hard in the early days, getting going. There's times when I remember once, our first hire, we're probably about a year in, maybe a little bit less. I remember we were driving to a chicken shop, I remember so specifically, and sales were just shit, man. They were terrible. We were making, I don't know, 10 orders a month, something silly like that. It wasn't sustainable. I'd gone from making I did 1.2 million in my second year of doing the car sales business at the age of 22. Okay, so I went from doing that sort of money to then BOXRAW making fuck all basically, right? And he reminded, no, Ben, we're onto something. You're onto something. Keep with it. I believe in the brand. It's just having that network around you, but also yourself being persistent enough to just push forward through the crap that's going to happen. That is inevitable, and you never want to believe it. Whenever I started any business in the past, I went in there with the intention that this is going to work. I'm going to keep working at it until it gets to that point. Yeah. And then the fourth question, how do you, or the second question, how do you know when it's a viable business?
Yeah.
That's a really tricky one, because I think for me it's just something instinctively where that's all I know, right? My first business essentially was at the age of 12, right? So I just had that instinct to try and make something, and I didn't really care about failing. For me, starting at a young age, and if you are young, what have you got to lose, man? What's your alternative to go work in a 9-to-5 job and do the same shit every single day? Like, people get to the age of 30 and start a business and are very successful, 40, 50, but you've got time on your hands. Okay. So I do agree, as you get older and people, you have responsibilities, you have a wife, kids, so it makes it hard to make that leap. But if you're young, like, what's your alternative, man? Just do it. Stop being a pussy and just fucking go out and do it. Serious. I'm serious. And some people are just in an hour about doing the business. Like, okay, just don't do it. Then go carry on working where you're working and complain about all the shit you complain about the co-workers, your boss. Like,
and that's a really good point. Do you have many of those people around you, or do you?
Not anymore.
No,
not anymore, man.
Back in the day, is that something you have?
Yeah, all the time, man. It's just that negative energy, man. I've got to listen. I don't care if you own a business or if you're a school teacher. If you're a school teacher and you're passionate about it, we're going to get on. But if you come at me and you're moaning about your relationship, your job, then do something about it. What more of a push do you need? It's just, but you're given, and I get it. It's a hard jump to make when you get into that comfort zone of being in that 9-to-5, doing something. You've got a safe salary. It's hard to make that leap, but what's the alternative?
It's starting. So if there are people in that 9-to-5 scenario where they don't really like the job, they want to do something else, but they don't know. Like you say, it's that mental barrier of not knowing when to leave and what. I mean, I think most entrepreneurs have an experience where they've been working some kind of job and they've just thought, I can't do this anymore. But just should that person like start doing something on the side, or should they literally just take that leap and say, well, I mean, this is entirely subjective, entirely your opinion.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm a perfect example of this, right? I had the car sales business. So when I was doing the car sales business from the age of 22 to I think 25, through that period, I was working on other businesses. I was trying to get off the ground, the mobile phone app being one. So we spent a year working on the mobile phone app while I was also working on the car sales business. Then a year into it, my brother then took over on his own. He was running that. Didn't work. I went back into the car sales business, started BOXRAW straight away. I didn't stop what I was doing. I was utilizing my evenings. Now, this is the big thing that people don't understand. It's you need to be a hustler, man.
Yeah.
But I had a friend recently from uni who I was talking to her about business. It was a great business. I really liked it. And then she got another job somewhere. She said, I just don't have the time. I'm like, look at the evenings, you've got time. Like, you got time on your side. When you're young, nowadays it's frowned upon to say, just sleep less. But in the early days, you have to, okay? I'm a big advocate now for mental health. I believe sleep's very important, and I can't sustain what I was doing back then. But you have to put the hours in. It's 4 or 5 hours a night I was sleeping. Sometimes less. Consistently with all the different businesses I was doing, because I recognize that here's the opportunity, but I also need to be doing what I'm doing on the side to be able to sustain. Okay, so you'll find the time. You will find a way if you really want to. It's just about how bad do you really want that.
And is it about also? I mean, what are your kind of hobbies outside of work? Do some people need to come off Netflix a little bit more, or
Yeah, I mean, listen. When I was launching BOXRAW, and I've had a big problem with this. I haven't really had any hobbies. My hobbies have been boxing and business, learning about space. Right, so I watch documentaries, things like that. But all my time in the early days was only filled by work. Okay, and I just recognized that. Listen, where I come from, people aren't supposed to do this, and that's where I want to get to. Now, I was just prepared to put those hours in. Back then it was the craze to like do long hours and people that were aware about sleep, but for me, I can only speak from personal experience. I don't know any other way. That's how I did it. Okay, now I'm all for it. I've had to start trying to find hobbies this year. I told myself, right, and you start taking at least one day off a week from work. I couldn't do it. You know, I could not find a hobby. I just got bored. I just wasted the day. I felt like a loser at the end of the day. And it's hard during lockdown as well, right? You can't see people. And then a few months back, I've got into longboarding. So I longboard to the office and back each day. And the weekends I'm out. And it's just, I don't know why I enjoy this. I've never been into skating or anything. And I just love it, you know? So it's just, you try a few things. You know, I got back into drawing, got back into designing clothes. I was spending a lot more time on it on Sundays. And so it wasn't making me tick, you know. I would prefer just to go think about work or do work. But I found my hobby now, which is, I just enjoy it. Yeah.
Nah, cool, man. This won't keep you any longer. I know you've got such a busy schedule, but it's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you. I am looking forward to listening to this back and hearing all the gems that you've done. Well, actually, I'm going to ask you one more question. So if there is someone who is literally a young person, they're in school, may have a little bit of trouble engaging with the curriculum or whatnot, how important would you say it's for them to find something? It doesn't necessarily have to be boxing, but to find something that they are passionate about. What would you say to that young person?
Yeah, I mean, you need to find what makes you tick, right? And if we look at all the people that are very successful in this world, whether it be rappers, footballers, you know, musicians, entertainers, and blah, 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 they've gotten to they're the best at what they do because they found their passion at a young age. You know, yes, you do get the anomaly who started at a late age, and there's many, you know, elite level world champion boxers who started at the age of 18, right? They started at a young age, they found that passion, and they made a career out of it. So using that as an example, it's incredibly important. But what I will also say is, for me at least, what education taught me was that it was just that work ethic in terms of like following a strict schedule to then get the results. I wasn't the smart kid, but I still came out with pretty much all A's, but not because I'm not naturally smart, right? But I had the work ethic, and I think boxing taught me that, you know, just right. I'm going to set amount of hours to do this topic. That's all I did, right? So I think it's at that young age. It's hard, right? Because you don't recognize it at that age.
Yeah.
But understanding that what you do now is really going to define what you do in the future. And although you have time, the time is now to get your shit together.
Yeah, knuckle down. Now, I really appreciate you coming on and giving up your time to speak to us. And if do you have any handles that you'd like to plug, or would you prefer people just go to your box?
Yeah, check out. I mean, I've only just gone public on Instagram recently, but I mean, BOXRAW account is BOXRAW. The main Instagram, personals Ben.Amanna on Instagram. Yeah, man.
Amazing. And no spam messages, guys. If you
listen, people say they listen to this, they want to chat this, and I'm open. No, I do give people time. You know, I do give people time. But occasionally you get this one person that's, you know, can we do this, or, you know, can you design this, or can you send me your tech pack, or can you tell me your supply? I'm like, come on, man, do the work.
Yeah.
If it's a question, man, listen, I'm always open.
No, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much again. And I know we'll keep you in touch. Guys, until next time, peace and love. Take care.
Thank you, man.